Okay, so welcome back to the channel, guys. In today's video, we're going to be continuing the gold 2024 backtesting session where we go from the beginning of 2024 all the way up until the end of 2024. In this video, I'm going to be explaining the full strategy that I use, and we're going to be going through a backtesting session on gold to show you how it works in the market and my personal perspective on price. So let's not waste any more time. Let's head right over to the charts and let's get straight into the video. Alright guys, so thanks for joining me here over on the charts. So we'll get right back into where we left off. So what we can see here, first of all, on the daily time frame, is that we were in this overall very parabolic bullish trend at the time. After we had this big rally, price kind of starts to move very correctively down. So we've sort of initiated this pullback phase, but overall price is still bullish and we're looking to bring price back up towards these highs because that is the highest probability scenario to see given this bullish trend and given this bullish momentum and the way price is behaving on the lower time frames as well, which we'll get into now. So how I'm currently viewing price and my perspective on this would be that we've come down, swept some previous lows also here as well. We've held demand, and you can see on the 4 hour in particular, once we had a sweep of this low, price starts to shift bullish and we start to get this clear bullish order flow coming back into the market. So you can see there we had that change of character. Price comes down, holds this area of 4 hour demand, and then once again we see the push up, break of structure, and then if you if you also look to the left, notice where price is reacting. There's very little for it to react from here, and it's very unlikely to reverse because of that. So since it has not swept any key levels of liquidity, and since it is not really reacting from a clear area of supply and is overall bullish, the overall and the highest probability scenario here would just be to look for more buying opportunities, right? So again, what we can see, price has pulled back very correctively in the current trend leg. We've held demand, and again, price has started to push away. So ideally what we can look for here is if price can break above this current structure, we can then basically infer that it's flipped bullish internally, so we can look for price to trade back towards this previous high, right? So if we go down to the M15 as well, you can see this is the current lower high that we need to see price break, which I think is very likely given how it is moving at the moment. So let's see if we can see that. Right, there you go. So that's that M15 change of character. Ordinarily, I would set a limit here on an area of imbalanced demand, but you can kind of see there isn't one. It's just this efficient price action. So what I'm going to do instead is just let this develop, see if any more areas form, and see if we can look to enter based off that. So let's see how price develops from here. It looks like price is just going without us in this case, but maybe we can see a pullback. Let's have a look. Right, there you go. So now you're starting to see this pullback. So what I'm asking myself here is where could we see the pullback into? For me, the area that stands out at the moment, we have this area of demand on the one hour. So if we can see a reaction from here and price starting to flip bullish from here, we can look to buy. If not, we have this lower zone as well, which I've just spotted as well. So maybe we could see a sweep of Asia low into that. But yeah, let's have a look how price reacts. Obviously, I want confirmation in these areas anyway. Okay, there you go. So price starting to push up from that initial zone, but unfortunately no confirmation there. You can see price just rallied with no pullbacks. And it has now just broken that main trend high as well, as you can see right there. So what we can do now is we can get rid of some of this internal structure and markings because it's no longer relevant for us. Still expecting further upside though, based on how price is moving back towards these previous highs, which at the time I think was the all-time high as well. But yeah, overall very clear bullish structure, definitely looking to take advantage of this if we can start to get some pullbacks. So let's see how it develops from here. Right, this looks good actually. So you can see, didn't quite close above the high, but given the momentum and given the trend, I would still interpret this as a break of structure, and then this is just a pullback. So what we can see, price came down, we swept that Asia low into that area of imbalanced It didn't quite touch the demand actually, but it did sweep the Asia low into that imbalance. So if price starts to push bullish from here, this is a valid setup as long as we get that confirmation, which again doesn't really look like price wants to do. You know, if you considered this, you could consider this to be a change of character, but me personally, that's not a valid change of character for me because I need to see a clearer pullback. This is just like a single candle for me. But if you did interpret that as a change of character according to your rule set, you could maybe look for a retest of this, okay, which price never gave anyway, so again, not really any entries there. We've now had another break of structure, so we're just simply looking to follow this again back up to that external liquidity. Maybe if we can see a pullback into this hourly demand zone that price has just created. Let's see how it goes from here. Right, there we go. So price has tapped into that hourly demand. Yeah, I'm liking this. So it's also swept this low into the imbalance. Quite a big area, but if we can get a confirmation here, then this is a valid trade regardless. And there we go. That's exactly what I was looking for. You can see here we built these equal lows. Price swept them and formed a lower low, but then price breaks higher and created a higher high. So in terms of entries, it's probably going to be clear on the 15-minute. So you have this area of demand, right? So this is a valid entry area already. So I'm going to set a limit here now. Just there, stops just below. And for this backtesting session, if you remember, we're doing 1 to 3 mechanical TP rule. This is something I teach to the guys inside VIP, which basically just allows us to remove that emotional decision making based on that more discretionary approach. Because for example, right, if let's say we were targeting this high, just to give an example, what would you do and what would the average person do, right, if this went 3% in their favor, starts pulling back to entry before hitting their TP? The average person here is probably going to do something like close the trade early, they're going to close in a loss, or make all of these sorts of irrational decisions that are driven by fear and loss aversion, rather than the logical and mechanical approach of just simply having a set TP rule, for example. So yeah, that's essentially what I do, and that's what I prefer to do, just because it helps to remove that emotional decision making and uncertainty in your trading. So just mechanical 1 to 3. Obviously, if it does come to here, it's very likely that it's going to take this high anyway, but for the sake of this back testing, we are only doing this 1 to 3 TP rule. You've now got some liquidity built above that demand as well, which is what we like to see. Very corrective pullback as well, so this looks good. There we go, we're tagged in. There we go, price broke structure again. And there we go. So like I said, it was very likely to hit that high anyway, but it could have equally just pulled back to entry, and then, for example, we would have had a lot more to deal with in terms of the psychology of it. So again, price making its way up, we've broken structure to the upside. If we zoom back out to the left, still looking for price to target these highs. So if I mark them on, we have this one and this one. I wouldn't be selling if these highs get taken out. I've just simply marked them on as potential targets, just to see, you know, price could potentially start to reverse from them, but I wouldn't be selling unless price actually starts to show me a reversal from there. So let's see if we can start to pull back, or if price can start to pull back and present another entry. You can see that first liquidity level was taken and was rejected, but like I said, I'm not interested in selling here unless price presents a clear reversal. So the next POI for me is actually going to be this liquidity level right here. If we can see a sweep of that into the imbalance, that would be a valid area to look at. It doesn't look like price is pulling back into it at the moment. Yeah, okay, so obviously price is not pulling back there anymore. And cool, so it did break that second liquidity level as well, which was the current all-time high. as you guys can see there. So I'm also just going to mark that on as a main trend breaker structure. Zooming back out to the daily, you can see this was the main structure. And we can also go ahead and get rid of some of these internal markings. Right, so now that that external high is taken, right, what we can basically anticipate is that there's a high likelihood here that price starts to pull back higher time frame, maybe into this sort of demand on the daily time frame. Unless obviously it starts to just continue to rally and then form some more structure, I'd basically be anticipating a bigger pullback here. Obviously depending on how price reacts, which we can just react to, I guess. And yeah, there you go. So you're starting to see that pullback now. Quite a corrective looking pullback though, so this is kind of what we like to see. Right, and in terms of the next point of interest that I would look at here is notice how price is gravitating towards this previous low. So before looking to buy, I would at least want to see that low taken out because it is that daily demand low. So if we can see a sweep of that, or actually maybe if price could come all the way back down into this one. Yeah, so actually I have a few different points of interest in mind. This is the first one, this one next, and we also have this liquidity level as well, if price could sweep that. Overall still bullish though, so I'm not too interested in trying to sell this. Right, there we go. So that liquidity level was swept, right? But notice how price broke it. We broke it very impulsively. Still a lot of bearish momentum coming into play, and price didn't sweep this next liquidity level. So actually, I'm seeing a potential selling opportunity here. If price could maybe pull back into this supply, sweep this previous high, we can monitor price for an entry. Okay, no, so no pullback there. That wasn't really a valid trade for me. But yeah, nice one. That liquidity level has now been swept. Price is starting to react, as you guys can see. So what I'm thinking here, if we go over to the lower time frames, you can also see on the M15, we grabbed these lows, we've now flipped bullish. So actually, if we can see a pullback into the demand, I'm going to enter this like this with stops slightly below that lower demand zone. And again, just using a mechanical 1 to 3 TP. Let's see if this pulls back for us. There we go, we're in the trade. Let's see how it goes. Good push so far. We broke that high again. That's a good sign. And there we go. So a bit of drawdown on that one, but nice trade. Played out very well, and overall very clean setup. So TP hit on that one. And obviously as well, just to explain that a bit more, the reason I was buying from here was because this was an obvious previous area of higher time frame liquidity that price took out, and daily time frame was still overall bullish. So we were basically aligning ourselves and creating the highest probability that the trade would play out in our favor by only looking for those buying opportunities. Okay, so we're now starting to see price push up, and look at where it's trading to the left, right? So what we have to see here is the likelihood that price heads up to at least this high rather than reverse from where it currently is. And I would say obviously it's very likely to at least target this previous high, and then above that again you kind of have this 4-hour supply zone. We'll see how it goes once it gets there, but for now I am still interested in buying, particularly if you look on the 15. For example, we have this clear bullish order flow coming into play. We just mark some of this on. And then obviously as well, you had that initial change of character down there. Okay, so next POI for me would be this hourly demand. If we can maybe see a pullback into there, which we have just got. Again, notice price is not reacting from anything to the left. You've left sort of all of these highs up here as well. So price can close above this structure. This is a valid entry. Oh damn, I played price too quickly there. This should have been the entry. Just there. A bit annoying. That was my fault, guys. So very annoying. Yeah, damn. And price did actually continue rallying up and took the previous high. So that was slightly annoying. Just played it slightly too quickly there, trying to rush. But let's move on to the next trade. Again, still looking to take price up into at least that high. So we could look for another opportunity here. Not seeing anything yet though. Right, so price has come back down, kind of held this extreme, which was the lowest demand in that range. And then on the 5 minute, has it broken structure? No, so this is not valid just yet. Right, now it's valid, so this looks good. So notice how didn't respect the demand, but it did come below it, sweep the demand low, just here. So we've had a sweep of that demand low. Price is starting to rally. 4 hour time frame wise, it did also come into that 4 hour demand. And on the 5 minute, what made me look for this is the fact that you've broken structure just here. You've created an area of imbalance. So if we enter here on that last internal liquidity before the imbalance, stops slightly below the imbalance as well. And then going for a 1 to 3. Let's see how this plays out. Okay, nope, so stop loss on that one. That's fine, it was a valid trade, so no issues there. Yeah, it looks like price wants to come lower now. Yeah, there we go. So let's zoom back out and reevaluate. You can see now our price did in fact create a lower low. Just here. However though, if you look back out on the daily time frame, for instance, it is heading towards that daily demand zone we had marked. So if price can touch this area and starts to shift bullish, this is another valid POI because it's still within inside this daily trend leg. So as long as that bullish structure is maintained, higher time frame wise, I'm still interested in buying. And yeah, there we go. So there we have a sweep of the inducement into that daily demand. So if price can start to shift bullish here, we can look for buys. I want to see at least a 15-minute change of character here though. This one doesn't count for me because it's internal structure. So if you're looking at the main trend, for example, at the moment, this is the current lower high. This one was just internal, so it doesn't count. Unless price creates a new low here and then breaks that structure. Like that. Yeah, there we go. So this looks perfect. This is a valid trade. Swept the first tap of that daily demand. Now we've changed structure from bearish to bullish. Price created this area of imbalanced demand. down here. So if we can get a pullback into there, this can be a valid setup. And again, just going to target a 1 to 3 right there. Nice area of liquidity above it now as well. Has got quite far away from us, but if this pulls back, it would still be valid. Okay, no, so price is not pulling back for us now. Okay, so it is starting to pull back. Notice how as well it's kind of come up, not really reacted from anything here. We've got all of these highs left above. So actually, if we look at this whole, for example, this hourly demand that swept liquidity to the left, if we can see another confirmation in this POI, then that would also be a valid opportunity. You've got all of that internal liquidity resting above it as well. All right, there we go. So it also tapped into that extreme 15-minute demand. For a confirmation, we need to see this high broken. So yeah, unless this high is broken, the trade is not quite valid just yet. So let's wait and see if that happens. Otherwise, it could break this low again, and then we can go from there. Right, there we go. So that's what I was waiting for. We've had that change of character. We've got an area of imbalanced demand. So yeah, this is a valid trade. I'm going to set this limit. Stops slightly below it. And again, just going for that 1 to 3. Obviously, if you wanted to do a more discretionary TP rule, you could just go for this high. I think it's very likely to get hit if price does rally to a 1 to 3. Okay, there we go, tagged in. And yeah, there you go. So that the TP would have been hit on that one. But personally, I'd always just go for a 1 to 3. So now you've had that change of character. Price has broken structure again. Very clear bullish momentum coming back in as well. So next buy-in level is going to be this one. Clear level of demand that price left. There we go, quite a corrective pullback into it as well. So let's see on the lower time frames. There we go, that's our change of character. Notice the momentum as well, that's what we want to see. After the demand low was taken out. So you can see here, price didn't respect the demand, but it did take out the demand low. And one of the things I've spoken about before is the fact that when you have these higher time frame areas of supply and demand get taken out rather than held, the trade becomes a lot more high probability and likely to lead to a full move rather than just a small reaction. So here, what we can wait for is a pullback into the demand right here. And then stops just below the low, and we'll target a 1 to 3, which in this case aligns very nicely with that Asia high and the trend high to the left. There we go, we're tagged in. Notice how when it came down as well, built some liquidity just above the zone, which it then swept into the zone, and we've now had a push. And there we go, so perfect trade there really. Zero drawdown on that one. And now price has broken structure again. So again, just simply looking to follow this bullish structure back up to some previous levels. If we're zooming out, one thing I would want to be mindful of is that price is coming into that 4-hour supply zone where we could maybe see a reaction. So I would keep an eye out for that. But yeah, apart from that, just looking for more pullbacks to buy. Oh, okay, so quite an impulsive reaction from that supply. Yeah, so what I'm actually seeing now, I think we're likely to see price come back down and at least take these two equal lows down here. So until that happens, I'm not interested in buying again. And yeah, there you go. So those two lows were taken out. Price is still holding that daily demand zone though. So as long as this daily demand zone holds, then I'm still interested in buys. And I'd be taking the perspective here that instead of this being a breaker structure, I would view it as a sweep back into that daily demand, particularly because price has just swept the demand low as well. Okay, so let's have a look what it does here. If it can break above this high, I'm still viewing this as a sweep of that daily demand. Which it looks likely to do. Nothing just yet. Right, there we go. So that's what I was waiting for. It also created an area of demand down here. So if we can see a pullback into this, this would be a valid opportunity. Stops just below that low, and then same as always, 1 to 3 TP. There we go, we're tagged in. If you wanted to use the more discretionary TP rule, actually in this case I would have just targeted that high. But yeah, the thought process behind this trade was the fact that if you look back out on the daily, didn't hold the daily demand right, but it did sweep all of these daily lows. And now we've started to see price shift bullish again on the 15-minute time frame. So yeah, let's see how this trade goes. I should have ideally had a smaller stop than that, just so I could get away with targeting that high before 1 to 3 was hit. But let's see how it goes. If it's a loss, it's a loss. Yeah, there we go. So that's what I was expecting. Sweep of that high, and then price starts to reverse. Obviously, you could have had that smaller stop loss there. So what we could maybe see now, this was the change of character, right? So as long as price holds within this range, I'm still seeing it as bullish and I'm still interested in buying. What we can see is that price has pulled back. It swept the last internal low in the range. And now we're starting to push up. So if we can get another confirmation here, this would be a valid trade, a valid re-entry. Currently though, the only structure that I would need to see price break would be this high all the way up here, unless it creates a new low again. So let's see what it does. And I'll just play this on the higher time frame so it's a bit quicker. Right, there you go. So that's what I was waiting for. We've had a break of this high. Where can we see price pull back into? I like the look of, like, you've had this big imbalance push up and then you've got this area at the bottom of the range. But because that is so far away, I wouldn't just set a limit on it. I'd want to see another confirmation on that area. Right, there you go. So price is now in that zone. It also swept this inducement. So if we can see an M5 change of character here, this would be nice. That there, for me, didn't count as a change of character, just because if you look, for example, on the 15, this is the main structure. This was just internal, so it doesn't count for me. Although in that case, it did obviously play out. Now you've had the change of character, right? I'm not really seeing any clear areas of imbalanced demand here though. Maybe if price can pull back into this one. So let's set a limit on that and let's see how it goes. Again, just going for that 1 to 3. There we go, nice reaction so far. It held that demand perfectly. Kind of keep pushing or not. Let's just play this on the higher time frame so it's quicker for you guys. And there we go. So TP hit on that one. Very nice trade. Again, just repeating the same trade over and over again, really. Trading can be incredibly boring and simple if you just follow that same repeatable process over and over again. So again, price has now broken that structure, so we're looking for more continuations back up towards this previous high up here. But yeah, next POI I would look at is this area of demand. Price can push into there. There we go. So let's monitor for an entry. Okay, no, this is nice actually. So didn't respect the demand, but again, we've had a sweep of it. And now price has started to shift bullish on the M5. It hasn't yet created any imbalance, so it's not quite valid for me. Right, now it's valid. So you've created this area of demand. We've got some liquidity resting above it, so this is valid. I'm going to set the limit on this demand. Stops slightly below, and I'm going to target a 1 to 3 again, just below that high. Oh, slightly induced us. There we go, we're tagged in, and very nice. So again, perfect trade, pretty much zero drawdown, and obviously you could have targeted this high. But one thing that we can learn from this, right, is like if I was targeting the mechanical 1 to 3 just below that high, is it worth risking 3%? So at this point, you're 3% in profit, right? Is it worth risking that 3% for an extra 0.6 risk reward just so you can target that previous high? Not really. So I'm happy just to secure that 1 to 3, get out of the trade, and then move on to the next. Now, I think this video is already getting quite long, so I'm going to end it here and we'll continue from this point on in the next video. Before you guys go, if you haven't seen the previous part where I explain the trading plan and I give you my personal trading plan completely for free as a downloadable PDF document as well, then check out this video next. I explain the full strategy step by step and exactly how I trade. So make sure to watch that, and I hope you enjoyed this video. I will see you guys in the next one.